All right, we're live. How are you, Larry?
I'm doing great, my friend. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. And welcome to the Love What You Do show. My guest today is Larry Hagner of the Good Dad Project, and he's got a project going on right now. It's a mastermind for dads called the Dad Edge, and you can find that at thegooddadproject.com/alliance. But we're really not here to like promote, exactly that, and we can talk about that and everything. But I want someone who's listening in, right now or later when this is recorded and they're replaying it. I want people to hear your story because you're not a counselor, you're not a doctor, you're a dad and you had your struggles with that. And it sounds like you found peace and awakening through serving other dads and fathers, and helping them become better fathers, better role models, better people in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. We can start anywhere you want with that.
Well, I'll let you lead into that. Like, who were you before the Good Dad Project? How did that all get started?
Whew, how much time you got?
Well, we got about 40 minutes here.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think my story really started when I was a kid, and it started really, really early. My fatherhood story, child story, all that good stuff. It was a bit crazy.
Mhm.
So, I was at my birthday was actually yesterday. I was born in 1975. My
Happy
parents,
birthday.
though, thank you. It was like I was fishing for a happy birthday there, right? Um, but my parents were married back in 1971, I think, and then they had me when I was in 1975. I think they were married for about 9 months, and then after I think their marriage just was kind of headed for rocky times anyway, and they split apart.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of my father whatsoever, my biological father. I think their divorce was pretty bad. So, I didn't see much of him, and I definitely don't remember him at all. In fact, I remember being in preschool when I was 4, and I remember men coming by to pick up their kids, and I knew what a dad was, but I knew that I didn't have one, but I didn't
Mm.
really care. It wasn't like I felt like I was missing out on anything. I just
Yeah.
at that point in my life, at that age, I literally thought that moms go out and find dads. That we didn't have dads. They found them, and I just figured my mom hadn't found ours yet. No big deal. Didn't really bother me too bad. And I'll never forget the very first time she brought a man home. I was 4, and I think she'd been dating him for a while. They were dating. I think they're also coworkers. And I'll never forget this. The first time this guy comes over for dinner, and he's got like the 3-piece suit on. He's got the handlebar mustache. He was a data processor. He's got a trench coat. He's got a briefcase. 1979. And I look at him, and my mom introduces us, and the first question I ask him if he's going to be my dad, because I was like, oh man, like she did it. She found a dad. So super cool. And I remember like the way that they both reacted in
Yeah.
that moment. And it was just like, it was very awkward. But a year later, they did get married. They were married till I was 10. So they were married for about 5 years. Every year that they were married, it just got worse and worse and worse. He was a big drinker. He lost his job. I remember there was so much tension in their relationship. There was a lot of fighting, and he drank a lot. He was a very, very nice man when he was sober, but when he drank, he turned into a completely different person.
Mm.
And it was rough. He could throw down the iron fist. He was mentally and physically, verbally abusive.
Yeah.
And they got divorced when I was 10, and I've never seen him since. So when I was 12, from the time I was 10 to 12, I started asking a lot of questions about my biological father because I knew I had one. And my mom answered him. She showed me their wedding album, and I actually ran into him by mistake when I was 12. And I won't go into the detail of how that happened. I'll just let you know what happened. And then at the time he was married, 2-year-old son at the time. His wife was pregnant with their second. And man, I was excited. I was so excited to have a dad. And I
Yeah.
called him dad right out of the gate. I think we hung out for about 5 or 6 months. And then we drifted apart and we separated. And that was devastating. And I really went through a bad time. I ate. I was an emotional eater, gained a lot of
Mhm.
weight, failed the 8th grade, just all kinds of really dark things at that age.
Yeah.
And my mom dated, got married again. Every guy that she dated or married was the same type of guy, just heavy drinker. iron fist, weren't the nicest guys in the world. Definitely not father figures. So I'll end the story here. When I was, I went on to high school, went on to college, got my undergrad degree, started in the workplace. And then when I was 30, I was having a business meeting with a coworker in a coffee shop. And who came walking in to get their morning coffee but my father, my biological father, the one that I knew at 12 years old.
Did you recognize him? Did you
right away?
Really? But it had been like 20 years since?
It had been 18 years, but
Wow.
I recognized him immediately. We ended up connecting, and we've had a relationship ever since. That was 15 years ago. So, I would say it's more of a friendship. I wouldn't call it your typical father-son relationship. I think he and I are trying to make the rules as we go with this relationship. It's a good one, and which is great. And at the time I was married and my first son was on the way. So my kids don't know anything different. They just know him as grandma or grandpa and his wife. He's still married to the same woman. They've been married for 40 plus years, and everything's good. But here's what I can tell you. I knew what not to do when I got married, when I became a father, but I had no idea what to do. Yeah. And so that was very, very confusing. And what I can tell you now is that definitely have a better idea because of the work that I do with the podcast and the mastermind. And we've definitely uncovered what it is that men need most and where they thrive and what they really like to dig into as far as their learning and their evolvement.
What thanks for sharing all that, because I mean I can see how that struggle has shaped who you are now and who you're becoming, and who you get to serve, and it probably feels pretty damn good when you get to hear like a difference.
It does because there truly is no training ground for us as fathers.
We're in it.
We're in it. And here's the funny thing: in every aspect of our life, we're not expected to just dive right in. It's kind of like if, Brad, if you want to go be a cop, right? And you just want to, whatever you're doing right now, and you're like, I'm going to go be a cop. I'm going to join the police academy. And you show up to the police academy after being accepted, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't train people anymore. In fact, today you're a cop, and, head down to precinct number 2. They're going to give you a squad car, a gun and a badge and a taser, and you're going to go fight crime. But don't worry, be the best time of your whole life. You'll figure it out. But that's what it's like navigating marriage and parenting and finances and leadership and health. And it's the places where we get the least amount of training. And it can be a very frustrating road ahead. And it shouldn't be. That we weren't put on this earth to have a frustrating road ahead. We were meant to, as my hat says, live legendary. That's what we were meant to do.
Yeah, it's on the job training with someone's life right out of the gate, right? And there's probably a lot of stress that comes with that.
Right out of the gate, lots of stress, lots of unknown. We compare it to, in the community, it's like walking around in a huge dark room looking for the light switch. And you kind of keep hitting your foot on something, or you hit your arm on something, or you face plant the wall looking for it. And it's much easier to navigate that room if you're in that room with other men with shared experiences and they know their way around that room and you don't. Yeah. And you can ask for direction. You can ask for strategy. Hey, how do I, 10 paces to the right, 4 to the left, go diagonal 3 paces. There it is right there. And that's exactly what men need. They need that guidance.
Yeah. I've got a good friend and he's got 3 daughters, and I know, at least I'm assuming he doesn't have a support group, and I've just had conversations with him in the past, and I could tell that there's been times when he's like, I just had to get out of the room. I just had to leave. I had to put some things down because I was really frustrated. And he's like the most calm, cool person I know. And he's like, I just had to walk away. Like I didn't want to kill my kids. Like, like that kind of stuff comes up. And if you don't have, I know from my own work and my own men's work, that when I get to express those feelings and emotions that I think are completely unique to me, that I'm the bad person or weird person or whatever, and then I put it into a container, so to speak, which is like You're a Good Dad, the Dad's Edge and the Alliance, and the Mastermind, you now find out you're not alone. You're not the only one who's thinking these weird thoughts or these sometimes bad, horrible, thoughts that come into your head that just gets triggered, and you think you're, a bad person. And then to have that relief show up leaves me feeling like, man, I'm not the only person. Okay, I'm not,
That in and of itself right there is such a reassuring feeling. I'm not the only one going through this, because
Yeah.
there's definitely something to be said for surrounding yourself with like, wow, I thought I was the only one. And
Mhm.
that can be a very, very lonely feeling. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. That
Yeah.
feeling is a very isolating feeling. And just being able to open up the conversation of like, oh wow, you felt that too. Oh, your communication with your wife is not ideal either. How might we create that in our marriages then? Men don't have those discussions every day. We talk about the same 5 things. Brad, how's work? Good, fine. How's the family? Good, fine. What'd you guys do this weekend? Oh, we hung out with the kids, did their sports things. Did you see what Trump tweeted out? That's about as deep as we get. We talk about the surface level things. We talk about the safe things, because we don't want to give the perception that, hey, I don't have a handle of what's going on in my life.
Yeah. The weak perception,
Yeah.
and I have a t-shirt that says vulnerability equals strength.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And it's ironic, or not ironic, but it doesn't make sense on the very beginning when you first start opening up to other people. But once you actually do, you realize like letting down the guard is actually a good thing.
It takes more courage to let down the guard than it does to keep it up. And I think a lot of men in particular have the wrong idea of what it means to be vulnerable. In fact, I don't even like that word. I don't like the word vulnerable, because it to me, it doesn't feel good to be vulnerable. Like that word, that label.
Yeah.
But I do like authenticity. And authenticity is pretty much the exact same thing. And authenticity is just being comfortable with where you're at and how you feel about things, and being able to share what's going on in your life without worrying about like, am I going to be judged? Am I going to be, ostracized? Am I going to be this? Am I going to be labeled? It's just like, hey, this is who I am. You can like me or not, but this is who I am. And Dr. Zach Bush was just on Rich Roll, and he did an entire monologue about death and people dying. And the one thing he said, he was on a rotation one night where he worked a 36-hour shift, and he actually resuscitated 3 people, which is fascinating, because if you look at the statistics, people who die and who are resuscitated, people who get resuscitated only happens 6% of the time. So 94% of the time, people don't get resuscitated and they die. Or if they do get resuscitated, they're on life support. But in this one particular shift of 36 hours, they resuscitated successfully 3 people, and they couldn't have been more different. One was an African-American older man who was a pastor, had all kinds of comorbidities like diabetes and all kinds of things. Another one was an elderly Caucasian man who was just the end of his life. And the other one was a 16-year-old boy who was in some sort of trauma. And he said all 3 lives couldn't have been different. And the first question that all 3 of them asked when they were brought back, and they were all separated, they weren't together in the same room, was, why'd you bring me back? Because all 3 had a very similar experience. And that was just an unbelievable feeling of acceptance, that when they passed from this life to the next, there was an unbelievable feeling of absolute acceptance for who they are. And the whole point of his 10-minute monologue on Rich Roll's show was that, what if we just accepted each other for who we were, and we lived within that authentic life of like, hey, I am who I am. Here's all the good and here's all the bad, and I'm going to live within that. And people can accept me. And the funny thing is when you do live within that, people accept you more because they relate to you. No one really relates to the good, the fun, and no one really relates to the social media highlight reel of my life is amazing. Like I'll finish it with this. I just posted a family picture not too long ago where we were all smiling. And I think in the caption, I put something like, don't let this picture fool you. This was the 10th picture taken because it was a complete and total crap show. before this final 10th attempt was taken, and everybody was happy because people were yelling at each other and screaming, and there were tears and there were temper tantrums, and they finally got that half a second shot where we were all smiling for just that moment. And that feels really good to people. It's like, oh, okay, that, all right, I get
This
that.
is how it feels for one instant in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a lot of photography, and I had a studio for a while. And one of the tricks to great family photography is a lot of photos. And if you do a good job, you keep everything the same. And then it's easy to like Photoshop, dad's head that's smiling when everybody else is not. And he's like pissed at the other, the little girl or whatever. And then to Photoshop the dogs in when their head's turned. And, it takes those 20, 30 moments to get one good one. I had to do it with my brother.
I saw you light up when I was telling that story, and I was just like, is there something there? Is he got
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, you get it. You get it.
Yeah. It's to compare ourselves to the moment that was taken in one instant out of someone else's lives, disrespects all everything else that was built. Like to look at a building that's built and think it's amazing. It may have taken years to build it. I'm sitting literally across a church that's probably 100 years old, and it's built out of big, giant limestone. They didn't have computers when this thing was built. It was built off the sweat of, the backs of men and women, one stone at a time. And it's still standing. And that takes them, it's really cool.
Do you mind if I just segue with that really cool?
Sure.
I didn't know you were going to share something like that, but I want to share something I think that is so appropriate for the title of your show, which is Love What You Do. And I know you're interviewing me, but I'm so curious why love what you do. And I've got a story to share about that.
Why love what you do? Because right as you asked that question, I got like chills down my back. So that's my little sign, or not my sign. I guess that's God's sign. Because when we forget who we are and what we're here to do, it feels so bad. It's just not, and when we remember, who we are and what we're capable of, it feels so good, and, it took me a long time to figure that out, and I'm still figuring it out, that when I was stuck behind a computer in a corporate job for a long time, I didn't realize how crappy I felt. And then when I started connecting with people and started realizing more and more and more and more and more that we're all very much the same, just a little bit, just a different container, less hair, more hair, black, white, green, purple, fat, skinny, whatever. On the inside, we're very much the same,
And it's interesting that if you love what you do, then there is a reason why you're doing it. What's the reason you do this show?
Because there's so many people that are stuck behind a veil of fear, that when someone else can hear your story, Larry, when someone else can hear anybody else's story that I've interviewed, there's an opportunity, a window that opens up when they are authentic, that person who's listening can hear something for themselves, and they're like, maybe I can do that too. I didn't realize that, like in your circumstance, maybe not your story, but some of the people that you've worked with, that I thought I was an a-hole dad. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I just don't have someone else to reflect this stuff to, and I can actually talk to some other men. I didn't know those things existed, and so it's an opportunity for people to hear something that they don't know exists, but a lot of people are deeply craving connection.
I totally agree.
To themselves.
I totally agree. You have any objection to me sharing a quick story about the church that you're looking at?
No.
Yeah. So have you ever heard of the Fable of the Three Bricklayers?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. I'm going to probably butcher some of the details a little bit, but you'll get the main idea. So
Yeah.
the three bricklayers is this. The dad and his son are walking along the street. They see these three bricklayers who are building this beautiful church, maybe one just like the one you're looking at. And the son asked the dad, he's like, Dad, why are they building that? He's like, I don't know, son. Maybe we should ask them. So they go up to the first bricklayer and he says, hey, excuse me. He's like, sir, why are you doing the job that you're doing? And he looks at him. He's like, well, son, he's like, I lay bricks for buildings because I need to pay my bills. I've got kids at home and I've got people to feed. And so I do this to put food on my table at home. That's really important to me. They go to the second bricklayer and they're like, why do you do what you do? And he said, well, I'm a third generation bricklayer. My grandfather did it. My father did it. Now I'm doing it. He's like, it's been in my family for a long time. I take a lot of pride in doing this because it's been our family's work. They get to the third bricklayer and they said, why do you do what you do? And the third bricklayer says, I do this because I take a lot of pride in building a beautiful building where people can go and worship God. I love the fact that I can contribute to a building where beautiful music is played, scripture is read, and people come together to worship God. And every time I drive past this church, I know that I had a hand in bringing people together for something beautiful.
Yeah.
So, which is really cool. 3 different people, 3 very different whys of why they're doing the work, but all 3 legitimate of why they're doing it, why it's important to them. So the thing that we always question with men, especially the work that they do or why they're doing what they're doing, it's always so important because most men, unfortunately, are not doing the work that makes them come alive, which can be.
Yeah. Uh-oh, we lost Larry. I don't know what happened. Uh-oh. Well, while Larry is coming back, I'm sure he'll rejoin here in a second. Let me add you back to the screen. All right, there we go. Are your kids downloading music right now? Playing too much on YouTube?
I have my own channel, so I'm not sure what they're doing. But
okay. But yeah, you're just sharing. You're on the third person, right?
So is that all? Is that the last thing you heard was the third person?
Yeah. So he, the third bricklayer was, building, a church for God, and he was fine. I was hearing the purpose behind that.
Yeah. So his purpose was, I want to build I want to have a part in building a beautiful building where people can come together. They can worship God. They can hear the scripture of the day. They can understand. They can come together as a community, and they can be uplifted when they leave here. And every time I drive by this church, I love to know that I had a hand in that.
Yeah.
And so every single bricklayer had a different reason why they're doing what they're doing. And it's so poignant, especially for men, because most men feel very trapped in what they do because I don't have the training to move on. I'm miserable with what I do. I do it for a paycheck, and it's absolutely positively draining their soul. And even if you're in a job, and especially if you're a father or family man or whatever, if you're doing a job and what we call it, if you're not doing the work that makes you come alive, try to at least find a reason of what that purpose is and why you're doing that work. I mean, I think it's probably safe to say that maybe the first bricklayer didn't love what he did, but he was doing it because he wanted to feed his family. So it then became very important to him. And that's where he found his joy and his purpose in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to share that for you because the title of your show is so cool. Love what you do show. And then you pointed out that church, which reminded me of that fable of the 3 bricklayers.
It all comes up for a reason. Right. See, I try not to even before this, we got together today and a few minutes before, my mind was trying to figure it all out. How am I going to make this perfect? And I think a lot of that I've learned to give up and just trust the process. I know that my personality is good to be working with people, and I can make stuff up on the fly and be the funny, goofy guy. And that's what helps make me come alive, right? And I couldn't have led myself to this story if I would have just been, trying to make it perfect, right? So if there's if there's a dad that's listening, can you kind of share what's it look like? What's an experience of getting involved with, either, I guess maybe at the very base level, just listening to your podcast, to saying working inside of some of your masterminds or groups or workshops, and what's that look like especially for the guy that's not for me. I don't want to talk to anybody else.
The guy who doesn't want to talk to anybody else, I would ask, how's that working out for you? And I don't say that arrogantly because I used to be that guy. So I understand that guy very, very well. So let me talk about the podcast first. That was the first part of your question. The podcast for me is a front row seat to a great education. I don't call myself an expert by any means. I am not a guru. I'm the owner, the host, and the founder, and I'm the first client in line to learn.
I like it.
Because the cool thing about the podcast is, we've interviewed some really, we've been blessed with amazing big names, like Meg Meeker and Gary John Bishop and Gary Chapman, Mark Devine, Jocko Willink, Leif Babin. Um, Tim Kennedy just came on. We've had all kinds of professional athletes. And the cool thing about that is all these guys put on their pants the exact same way we do. And they're all fathers. And they go about, because of their life experiences, they get to go about their fatherhood journey just a little bit differently. And there's little things that they've learned. So like if you got somebody like Jocko Willink, who wrote Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership, and he's one of the best Navy SEALs that's literally ever walked the earth. You get to dig into his mentality, how he went about being one of the most elite Navy SEALs on the planet. And also now, how does he take that and put that through the lens of fatherhood and being a husband? So it's fascinating to learn. I would say if you listen to the podcast, we have about 600 episodes out right now. If you listen to the podcast, it's really, we identify what we call the 5 dimensions of being a husband and father, which is mastering your personal finances, optimizing your health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, creating a legendary marriage, epic connection with your kids, and leadership. So if you listen to any podcast, it will either have one or all 5 of those elements within it. We do a Monday show. We also do a Wednesday show where we do a live Q&A, and we stream it through our community, and we answer questions almost like a radio show. Where
Cool.
actually we stream it. We bring men on. They can ask questions, and we answer them to the best of our ability with our experience. Thursday, I interview one of our members from the mastermind, because we call that more in the trenches. So it's an everyday dad. It's not like these crazy high level guests that have all kinds of people who are trying to get something from it every time. It's the everyday dad sharing his everyday story. So that's the podcast. As far as the mastermind is really for somebody who's wanting to take that to the next level. Because one thing about listening to content, when you listen to a podcast, when you listen to an audiobook, what's really happening is you're exposed to an idea. Okay. So I can give you an idea. Like on a podcast, you might be like, hey, you should check out Seattle. It's got Mount Rainier not too far from there. It's got this, it's got that, it's got fresh fish at the market. It's got all these different ideas, all these things, right? It's very different than when you say, I'm going to take action. I'm going to do an RV trip, and I'm going to get from Kansas City to Seattle, and I'm going to stop in these places, and I'm strategically going to experience things along the way. So it's actually taking an idea and then putting it into a strategy and then executing it. And I just did it with a vacation. That's all.
Yeah.
But it's really for men who want to take an idea and 10x it. So most of our guys who come and do the mastermind, I would say honestly, about 70% of our guys who come and do the mastermind, it's because they want to create a legendary marriage. Most men, they can usually identify their marriage as okay, good, scale of 1 to 10. It's a 5.
Yeah.
But we weren't put on this earth to do that. We were put on this earth to create a legendary marriage, where it's passionate, and there's friendship, there's partnership, there's intimacy, there's self-care, there's everything. And there's the art of communication, which, by the way, we are absolutely not taught. The 3 needs of a woman are to be seen, heard, and feel connected to you. The 3 needs for a man is to feel appreciated, respected, and validated. And usually the other side doesn't know that. She doesn't know those are your needs. She's trying to communicate with you in her way. You're trying to communicate with her in your way. And it's like, hey, I'm speaking Chinese. She's speaking French. The whole time it's like, why doesn't she get me? He doesn't understand me. And it's just very frustrating. And it's a lot like trying to be a cop without going to the police academy. And you're just trying to figure it out. And unfortunately, what happens is usually what we see with marriages is you only have so many times to screw up, right? I mean, you only have so many times.
Punch card.
Yeah, you kind of get a punch card. I mean, a lot of people say do death do us part. Well, that's only 50% of the people. Here's the other scary thing.
Yeah.
The divorce rate's 50%, but the 50% that stay together, 1/3 of that 50% can actually identify themselves as excellent, happy, and legendary. Another 1/3 is, we're okay. I don't want to get divorced. That's too much trouble. So I guess we'll stay together. So they settle. And then the last 1/3, they want to be divorced. They're completely and totally checked out emotionally, physically. They don't want anything to do with each other. usually the top two reasons they're even staying together is either finances, or they're staying together until the kids move out and then they're done. So that's it. So it's literally only about 15% of marriages that actually happen can actually deem themselves as, we did it, it's legendary, we're connected. And they don't get there by themselves. There's usually, they have taken marriage classes, they're in groups, they're in mentoring, they're in counseling, they're learning. They're learning. The last thing I'll say about this is, a lot of people identify, if I need help with my marriage, if I need a mastermind, if I need a counselor, if I need some sort of intervention, we're broken. This should come natural to us. We love each other. This should be easy. It's not. It's a skill. Love is a feeling, but marriage is a skill. Love is a feeling, but communication is a skill. And unfortunately, we don't have those skills. And to add insult to injury, most of us are not raised with the parents that knew the skills either. So the whole time we're growing up, we're watching this example that wasn't ideal either. And then it just keeps repeating itself over and over again.
Yep. It's we have two ears and one mouth for a reason.
Exactly.
What's a man, I could dive into here. So what's one of the number one tools that you share, or that someone listening to this could take away, and bring into their marriage?
Oh boy. So there's 4 elements to a legendary marriage. So let me just explain. Self-care is one. You have to take care of yourself before you can be expected to take care of the other. It's just, and men in particular are really bad at that because of guilt, the perception of guilt and time. Self-care is important. The next one is partnerships. That's the not so sexy side of marriage. That's the business of marriage. That's the schedule. That's the chores. That's the finances. That's, you're taking this kid here, I'm taking this kid here. You do dishes, I cook. It's the not so fun stuff. But funny enough, that's where 50% of the arguments happen, is because that's where all the expectation is. I can't believe I'm doing the dishes again. It should be her job. I can't believe I'm taking the trash out again. He was supposed to do it last time.
Yeah.
So that's where emotional resentment begins. Then there's friendship, a deep knowing of each other. Do we like each other? Are we in each other's fan club? Do we like to hang out? And then, of course, there's lovers, which that one is self-explanatory. The problem usually is men in particular, we like to jump to that 4th element before all the 3 are taken care of, which is not a good thing.
Guilty.
Guilty. Everybody's guilty. But underneath all of that is communication.
Yeah.
If you want to build a foundation of what those pillars stand on, communication. And here's what I'll tell. I'll speak to the women in your audience, and I'll speak to the men. Let me speak to the men first. Don't fix her problems. Don't fix her problems. She doesn't want you to fix her problems. When she comes to you and vents, she doesn't want to point in the right direction. Now, if I come to you, Brad, and I'm sitting here talking to you about my problem, I would feel pretty slighted that you didn't give me advice, because the whole reason I'm talking to you man to man is because I want you to tell me what I should do. But when we're talking to women, that's not what they want. They need to be heard, they need to be seen, and they need to have emotional validation. So when your wife comes to you and she's venting, you want to use tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is not like, why are you so upset about that? Why don't you just send the kids outside if they're getting on your nerves? Or why don't you just go for a run? I don't understand why you're so angry. That's not helping anything. Sounds like you're pretty frustrated right now. Totally understand where you're coming from, because yesterday the kids were making a mess of the house. They were loud. I couldn't get them under control. I was about ready to lose my mind, just like you are now. How can I best support you right now? What feels right? And then just be quiet and let her, and she'll tell you, I just need you to hear me. Or can you watch them while I go for a quick run? Absolutely. So that's tactical empathy, is emotionally validating her by using the emotion you think she's in. Sounds like, feels like, looks like you're overwhelmed. And then how can I best support you? Now, for the women, this is really important. Your man needs appreciation. He needs respect, and he needs physical affection. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of like, well, he needs to be connected to me emotionally first and all this other stuff. I'm just basically telling you what a man needs. If you just sit there and look your man in the eye and say, I know you work so hard for my family, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't appreciate everything that you do for us. Do you know what that does to our heart? Do you know what that does to our soul when we feel validated and appreciated and respected by you? That is gold to us. And then, of course, most men, what I'll tell you out of the 5 love languages, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and quality time, men are usually 80% of men, physical touch, words of affirmation. I just gave you an example of words of affirmation, physical touch. Ladies, don't withhold sex from your man. Don't do that. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of like pity sex or anything like that, but your man needs to be held. He needs to be kissed. He needs to be hugged. He needs to have sex. Like these things are, they're food for our soul. We want to feel close to you. We want to feel loved by you. And I totally get, in order for you to get there, men have to emotionally validate. We have to be connected. We have to hear you, and we have to listen, and we have to have quality time. So I hope the advice I gave on both sides, without going too detailed, was enough for them to understand.
Well, I think it's just basically the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And what I heard inside of there, you call it tactical empathy, right?
Yep.
I call it reflective listening, of like really listening for what someone's going through, what someone's experiencing, and then just saying it out loud.
Exactly.
It's so valuable to be witnessed and validated, man or woman, doesn't matter, because we're so up here 99% of the time. And when we get that out and someone says, oh, it looks like you're frustrated, because sometimes we're just taught not to express any emotions. And when they hear that, it's like hitting the nail on the head, like ding, 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 ding. You got it. You know what I'm like? Oh, I love you. You get me. And it's really valuable.
Yeah, exactly. You see me, you feel me, you hear me, we're connected, and that's what women want. They want your attention. They want your quality time. They want your ear. They want your nose out of your phone and to look in their eyes, right? That's what they want.
Yeah. So what is the dad edge? Like what's I got the Good Dad Project. What goes in towards the dad edge? If I could speak.
Yeah, no, you're good. And I think Dad Edge is really the brand, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Good Dad Project was more of a personal brand when I first started this, because I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, Good Dad Project was blossomed out of a very, very dark moment in my own fatherhood journey. And I decided to create a Facebook page called Good Dad Project, and I was the project. I knew I needed help, and I knew that I needed to learn. And so so I started Good Dad Project. Hindsight, I probably would have just done Dad Edge, just because Dad Edge, it's literally the same thing. The Dad Edge is those 5 dimensions that I shared with you. The Dad Edge is learning skill sets within those 5 dimensions that allow you to help you show up as a father, to allow you to have more patience, more emotional capacity for those kids, to create those epic memories with those kids, to connect with them, to have that legendary marriage, to do the work that makes you come alive, to lead yourself, lead your family, lead your business, while also optimizing your health, physical, mentally, emotional health, and also taking care of your finances. Men get really overwhelmed and stressed out over finances. And when you have better control of those things, that right there is the Dad Edge. And the final thing I'll say about Dad Edge, and what I've learned about men just in general, is that men want to be a part of something that is a community of like-minded people, but they also want to feel cool doing it. And that's like why one of our taglines is what's on my hat, which is live legendary. Live legendary. And I'll share this final quote with you as I finish this segment out. The definition of hell is meeting the man that you could have been when you're on your deathbed. And the whole purpose of Dad Edge is that when a man passes from this life to the next, that he is going to reflect on his life, and he's not going to meet that man. He will be looking into a mirror, and he'll have a smile on his face going, you know what? It wasn't perfect, but I wouldn't have done it much different. I led the life that I wanted, created the relationship with my wife that I wanted, created the relationship with my kids that I wanted. I made a change. I made a contribution. I learned, and I wasn't drifting. I wasn't on automatic pilot. I wasn't in the wash, rinse, repeat. I lived life on my terms, and it felt really good. And I'm good. That's
Peace
dad
out.
edge.
See ya.
Yeah, that's dad edge.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate what you do. It's really
Thank you.
cool. Now, the one question that came into my mind was, is this just for married dads, or is it for divorced dads?
We actually, so in the mastermind, so legendary marriage is only one aspect of the 5.
Mhm.
The 4 other dimensions, have nothing to do with, don't have much to do with marriage at all. So we absolutely welcome men with open arms who are single dads. In fact, in the mastermind, we have what's called single dad call team, which we have, all of our mastermind call teams are virtual. So, and we have single dad call team. So we have that on Monday nights. We have, I think, at least 18 guys who are in single dad call team. And it's led by probably one of the best guys that we on the planet as far as knowledge and emotional intelligence and navigating the waters of the dynamics between you. And he doesn't even call his ex-wife. He calls him his kid's mom. And they have a friendship. They have a relationship. They co-parent together. And there's a different dynamic there. So to answer your question, we absolutely cater to men who are single fathers.
Cool. I just want to make sure that was, when I was listening, I was like, nothing wrong with like how you shared anything, but I was trying to listen from a different point of view of like, well, maybe if there's a single dad out there, like he's hearing a lot of, with the wife, like, and that can be when we don't feel, or if we don't think we are going to be accepted into a community, our egos will get us out of there, because rejection will show up as the next step. And then it's like, nah, this is just for married dads. Can't be a part of this. And you got a whole community for single dads, married dads. As long as you're a dad, show up and be supported. Now, I can't speak for what it's like to be a father yet, but I can speak for what it's like to be a part of a community that supports you no matter what. And it's awesome. So if you feel alienated, if you feel like you want support, don't know how to ask, reach out to Larry, get on his website, listen to the podcast. Even if you're not even at that step yet, you can listen to the podcast by yourself. No one's going to tell you to do anything. And that can start to open up your heart, can start to open up your mind. You can hear other dads and other fathers' stories of what they're going through. And it can transform your relationship with yourself, with your spouse, ex-spouse, and your kids. And it's pretty cool work.
Amen.
Now, last part before I let you off the hook. So, love what you do show. We didn't really get into the how you got into this, but this is what you do full time, isn't it, Larry?
This is what I do. Yeah, I'm happy to share the story. I can do it quickly if you want.
Yeah, just real quickly, because I know we jumped in. I didn't even get into this. I was like, I gotta ask that.
No, yeah. So I was married in 2003. So this year will be 17 years of marriage. I would say, so with how I grew up, half my childhood was spent without a father figure. So I knew what that felt like to not have a father in the home, to feel abandoned. And then the other half was always spent with a toxic one. So I got all these great lessons in what not to do. Right. So I'm like, and I was so determined to not repeat what I went through growing up. And here's what I can tell you. There's a couple things I'll tell you about that. When you're really focused on what not to do, whatever you resist persists. So if I tell you, Brad, don't think of an elephant.
Pink elephant just showed up.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about? You're thinking of an elephant, right? So whatever you resist persists. Your brain doesn't hear it. Basically, whatever, if you're alcohol free and all you think about is like, I can't have beer. All you want is beer. So I was like, okay, here's all these things I'm not going to do. Just not going to do all these things. I know I'm not going to get drunk and, throw a beer bottle at my kid. I know I'm not going to hit him. I know I'm not going to throw him down. I'm not going to do all these things. So the other thing I'll compare this to is I know all these things I'm not going to do, but that's not enough. That's not enough, because if I told you, hey, I want you to replicate a miniature church of what you see outside your window. It only has to be 12 by 12, but a miniature church. And here's 100 ways not to build it. You're going to be like, that's great, but how am I supposed to build it if these are the 100 ways not to do it?
Yeah.
So when I was married, it was the first 6 years, and I would say first 6 or 7 years, My oldest son was 6 at the time, and my youngest was 4. Now I have 4 boys, so I have 14, 12, 6, and 4. My 12-year-old at the time was 4. I was going through what every other man was going through. I didn't really care for what I did too much. I was stressed out, but I got a lot of my validation from work. My health was always okay physically, mentally, and emotionally, not so good. Finances weren't that great. My marriage was mediocre at best. Connection with my kids, I had a hard time being patient with them. Leadership, I was a terrible leader. So I was really struggling in all those areas. So the night that Good Dad Project was birthed in 2012, I was packing up our home because we were getting ready to move. And there's nothing more than I hate than moving. So I'm packing up my kids' playroom, spent 3.5, 4 hours packing up. My 4-year-old comes down, the one who's 12 now. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to go take a break. Please don't get anything out. I just spent all this time packing it. No problem, Daddy. Come back down 30 minutes later. What happened? Virtually everything that I had packed up, he had gotten out. I spanked him. I spanked him so hard he hit the ground. And then I went to pick him up and he shuddered with fear. And at that moment, I didn't see my son. I saw me as a kid. And I'm like, it hit me so hard emotionally, seeing his face and seeing what I had just done. At that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of not knowing what to do. I'm sick and tired of not having any direction. And I'm sick and tired of basically telling everyone, life is good and fine and good, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that I went to my office and I was just really emotional. And I went on Facebook to, of course, do the one thing that we do when we do something stupid, and that's distract yourself. I don't want to think about what I just did. I'm going to go on social media and not think about it. And I saw this thing in the lower left-hand corner that said create a page. And I clicked it. And tears in my eyes. I don't know. Maybe it was divine intervention. I don't know. But the words Good Dad Project rolled off my mind and heart and onto that keyboard. And I was like, I'm just going to create this page, and whoever follows me. And I'm going to go out and learn something new every day as it pertains to being a better person, a better man, a better father, and the whole 9 yards. And that turned into a blog a year later. 2 years later, that turned into a podcast and a book. And then now here we are 5 years later after the launch of the podcast. We've been doing masterminds now for 4 years. But it all came within that really, really dark place that most men will hit at some point sooner or later. But yeah, that's how this whole thing started.
That's really cool, man. So if you're out there and you've had, a dark moment and something's calling you to bring light to it, follow the light, because it feels pretty good, Larry, anything else you want to share as a last comment or words of advice for anybody that might be listening?
Yeah, the words of advice that I would share with your men is build a band of brothers. Whether it's our mastermind or something else just in your life, but just build a band of brothers. Build a group of men. And I'm not talking about your college drinking buddies. I'm not talking about the guys you go have beers with and talk about the same things. Yeah. I'm not talking about the people at work that you congregate around the water cooler. I'm talking about men who are not within your life, but in your life. They know how your marriage is doing. They know how your patience is as a father. They know if you're absolutely depressed and miserable at work. They know all these things, and they're willing to challenge you a little bit and to look out for you and not to enable you, because they want the best for you. We call, like, the college buddies that you drink beer with on the weekends, we call those the rust relationships. Actually, we don't call them. That was actually in Stephen Mansfield's latest book, Men on Fire. Rust relationships are those surface level relationships, but for you men, deep relationships where you can go and have these conversations of what it means to build the marriage that you want, to have the connections with your kids that you want, all these things. And for the women, if I could share anything for the women, most men, without a shadow of a doubt, have the best of intentions. And men want to fix the things that are going on under their own roof before they leave the family that lives under it. Yeah. I have stood toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose with men for over 5,000 hours over the past several years. And what I can tell you is 9.5 out of 10 men, they want you, the woman that they're married to, no matter how bad the relationship seems right now, they want you and they want their family. They don't want anything outside of that. And what they want and what they need is your respect, your appreciation, and just know that that man is doing the best that he can. And it's very, very hard for us as your provider and as your leader and your protector and all these things that we are, for us to say, I feel very weak right now and I don't know what direction to go in. He's not going to tell you that. He's going to tell you he's fine and good and he's going to try to remain stoic. But just know that your man has best of intentions and he's probably doing the best job he can with what he's got.
Yeah. I think it's perfect. Larry, I'm going to end the broadcast here. I'll chat with you after this, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do, and I can tell you love what you do. So
I got you.
have a good day, everybody.
You too.